Awesome. All right. I had to get the recording started and get all that going. So awesome. Thank you so much. I'm Paige, I'm an alcoholic, and yeah, let's dive in. And where we're out of the book, I was talking before the meeting, it's actually a really exciting place because we're diving into how it works, and we're going to break down a reading that is probably, I'm sure, very, very, very familiar to everyone here. Like, I'm sure we've read this 1,000 times. And my hope is that as we break this, or heard it read 1,000 times, as we break it down, we're going to have a new experience and see things maybe we didn't see before, and grow a deeper understanding. And I was mentioning before the meeting, like at this point in the book, we start to build momentum. We were having chapter after chapter after chapter laying down the foundation of step one. And then we spent all of we agnostics diving into step two. And now as we get into how it works, we're going to have a look at step three. We're going to have a look at step four, and then into action. Man, it gets going. And so we see there's this urgency and this momentum, and there's some excitement. It's fine if you guys aren't feeling the excitement, but I'm excited. Excitement, enthusiasm, optional. Also pants, just as long as you keep your camera up. All right, so let's dive into how it works. And here's my experience. I don't know about you guys. A lot of times I'll come to meetings and people will be sharing, and they're like, oh, we have no idea how it works. How does this thing work? I'm like, it's in the chapter titled How It Works. It's right there. Thank goodness they explained it. But if there's anything I could sort of emphasize from the title, is that it works. It works. Alcoholics Anonymous works, but the it that we're referring to is the program of action and the 12 steps. And as we get into the reading how it works, we're going to break down and read the 12 steps. As we all know from going to many, many, many meetings, for years and years and years. But that is the it. That is what I need to do in Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12 steps. And part of why we're having a look at the steps, all 12 of them, what we're trying to break down is what the decision we're going to make in step 3. Spoilers, we might not even get into this too much today, but there we go. There we are. What we're going to get into today is step 3. And in step 3, we're going to make a decision, and the decision is ultimately to work these 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. And so how it works is sort of laying out, like, here's what I'm deciding to do. I'm going to have a little bit of information before I decide to hop on in. So, all right, how it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail. Now, oftentimes there's a little bit of AA folklore that, Bill Wilson said if he could have changed anything in the book, he would have changed rarely to never. Well, unfortunately, that's not true. He said rarely, he meant rarely. It was always going to be rarely. Because I think Bill knows us. Bill knows us, Bill loves us, and you tell me never. You give me an absolute. I mean, maybe you guys are always more spiritual, but I am going to work these 12 steps. I'm going to bust my bum. I'm going to make all my amends, and I'm going to get drunk just to show you. That's how my brain works. I'm sure you guys don't relate. But he said rarely, and he meant rarely. So, rarely. And what I'll say, actually, too, is I've been doing this for a little while, a little over 15 years. And I have not seen anyone ever relapse or drink again who is doing this work. I've seen a lot of people drink again. I've seen a lot of people sort of do some of it and drink again. And I've seen some people really dive into this work and stop taking that course of action. And that erosion of the things that I need to do. And I've seen them drink again. So, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. What is our path? Well, it's 59, page 59, the 12 steps. That is our path. That's the path. And it would be rare to see someone fail. To fail is to drink again. It would be rare to see somebody fail who has thoroughly followed our path. And sometimes I like to do this thing where we take, I call it Missy Elliott, and we're going to talk about Missy Elliott actually in step 5, where we flip it to get the meaning, right? Because we hear how it works read, rarely have we seen a person fail. We heard it, we heard it read like that. But let's switch it. Often have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly done nothing, who has thoroughly sat on their 4, who has thoroughly avoided amends. Often have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly done nothing. And that's our experience. And here's the thing, this first paragraph, man, if you're like me, I come to the rooms and I hear this paragraph read, and I'm thinking like, there's something about me where I read this paragraph in a really negative way, and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna fail. Like there's something about my brain that reads it that way. But this first paragraph is good news. It would be rare to fail. The only thing that is asked of me is to thoroughly follow this path. That's the only thing. That's good news. And it says those who do not recover, and immediately, if you're like me, you're like, that's me. I'm not going to recover. I'm one of those. And we're going to talk about constitutionally incapable, but I'll die on that hill in a little bit. I'm getting ahead of myself. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. So let's flip it. Let's flip it and gain the meaning. Those who do recover are people who can and will completely give themselves to this simple program. The simple program is the 12 steps as outlined in this book. That's what it's talking about. And we see that from our experience. I come to Alcoholics Anonymous and I've got before I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, I've got one reason for relapse. And that is the inevitability of the first drink. Because I'm an alcoholic and I have the obsession of the mind that's going to take me back to it again and again and again. But after I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, there's only one other reason for relapse. And it is a failure to grow spiritually. A failure to work these 12 steps. That's it. Like, that's it. I either didn't do it or I started to do it and then I stopped. That's it. And then it says, usually men and women. There's that joke where people have that pause where it's like, there are people who cannot completely give themselves to the simple program. Usually men, hard pause, and women. I'm not making that joke. I would never. All right. Who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. So at the depth of who they are, unwilling to be honest or unable to be honest. And if you're here today, I've got some news. That's not you. That's not you. Because we read that and immediately think, oh, I'm constitutionally incapable. Heck, we might have even been sober a couple of years. And it's like, Paige, what if I'm constitutionally incapable? If you're here today, you are not constitutionally incapable. To be constitutionally incapable, from my experience, what does that look like? It looks like I don't need help. It looks like not being open to following suggestions. It looks like, no, I don't have to do this. It looks like not keeping appointments and not showing up. And I got some news. If you're able to show up to this big book study, even if you're a little late, I don't mind, love you. You're constitutionally capable. You are capable. You are able to do this. And here's the thing, a lot of us think, no, you don't understand. I'm a chronic relapser. I'm a chronic relapser. I must be constitutionally incapable. But here's the thing, chronic relapsing is not a sign of constitutional incapability. It is a sign of alcoholism. You see, to drink again is a sign of the mental obsession. And if I am a relapser, that does not mean I'm constitutionally incapable. That means I am up against the obsession of the mind that is doomed to take me back again and again and again to that first drink. And here's the thing, I got some news. The 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous are alcoholic proof. They have to be, because we're a bunch of drunks, So if I just do this thing to the best of my ability, I will recover. So that is one of the hills that I die on. I actually, if I do well on time, we'll get to one of my 2 hills that I die on. One of the hills that I die on is that you can recover. Yes, you can recover. You can get well. You can have this spiritual experience. I know it says we cease fighting anything or anyone, but I'll fight you on this. Yes, you can. That's a hill that I die on. I got some other ones that are rooted more in me being pedantic already. So it says there are such unfortunates. But again, the people who are constitutionally capable are those who are not completely giving themselves to these 12 steps. And it says they are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. And I'm going to point that out. Incapable of grasping and developing. So getting and then growing. So I grab a hold of and then I grow. And a manner of living is a way of life. So these 12 steps aren't like a project. And some of you guys know what it's like to start a DIY project or like a home improvement project or like gardening. Haven't done the gardening from last spring and we're turning the corner to this one. We got a project. No, this is how I live my life, and I take this course of action and I continue to grow it. Way of living, way of life. And I'm not calling anyone out for their gardening. I don't garden. So if you even are approaching it, you're doing better than me. I'm not calling anyone out. And it says, which demands rigorous honesty. But what is the level of honesty that I need to start with? It's great if we have cash register honesty, but that's not the honesty that we're talking about. We're talking about that honesty to be able to see, I need help. I can't do it on my own. That is the level of honesty that is required. That's what we're talking about. If we can start there, the honesty will come. It'll come. I promise. It'll come. And so this is a way of life that I need to grab a hold of and I need to develop. So it's not a set it and forget it deal. And then it goes on, because for those of you who are still like, I don't know, I still might be a little constitutionally incapable. Well, it says their chances are less than average. That's not zero. That's not zero. So even those that are constitutionally incapable, it's below average. And so what is average? Now, we're not going to have a look at modern statistics of 12-step of AA because it's measured in a different way. At the forward to the second edition, it talked about a 75% success rate, but they weren't basing it off who came to the meetings. They were basing that success rate off who came and actively gave these 12 steps an actual fair shot, all of them. And I will say that sounds fair. That sounds accurate. Even today, that sounds accurate. And so the average is 75% success. Less than average would be somewhere below that. And whenever we talk about statistics, because if you're like me, I'm looking for I'm not gonna, it's not gonna work for me. It's not gonna work for me. I'm always looking for, it's not gonna work. But if you're like me, I'm showing up to AA with a 0% success rate. I got nothing. I'm batting all zeros. I'm not even batting 200. I'm not 180. I'm batting zero. I don't know why I'm doing a baseball reference. I haven't even hit the ball to foul it off. It's just nothing. I've got nothing. Nothing. So I'm showing up with 0%, and here we're seeing something that even if I was constitutionally incapable, would be almost as high as 75%. So this thing really is available. Like really, this first paragraph is like, man, you can recover, but there's something about how it's written or how our brains read it, which is like, oh, I'm constitutionally incapable. And then it says, there are those two who suffer from grave as in like fatal, very, very, very serious mental disorders. I've got some news. That's not most of you either. And I'm not discounting some of your mental health conditions or anything like that. Genuinely, I'm not. But like, we're talking about severe, severe, severe stuff. And it says, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. What is that honest? I need help and I'm willing to follow direction. That's it. That's all that is asked of me. It goes on to say our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. And I'm just going to point something out. And now I promise this is not a hill that I'm dying on. But often when we are called to share our story and asked to be of service in that way, we're asked to share, and we often say, all right, I got to share about what it was like, what happened, and what it is like now. But it's not it. It is me, what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. And what was I like? What I was like that we need to, we don't need to, I need to, y'all don't need to do nothing. What I need to do is I need to have a look at what was I like in terms of the allergy of the body? What was my experience with the obsession of the mind? Sharing my experience with the hopelessness of my alcoholism. And then what happened? Well, what happened was I worked the 12 steps. I took this course of action to produce the spiritual awakening. So the 12 steps in the spiritual awakening is what happened. And then I'm called to get current with you. What am I like now? What is my life like now? And it's always helpful to be humble about it. You know, and I'm saying that is like, listen, I show up and I am deeply flawed and frequently wrong. And some of you guys, you're like, we know. But to show up in that way. And then it says, if you have decided you want what we have, what do we have, right? Because when I got here, I didn't know what you had. I knew you had the coffee with the creamer that wouldn't stir in no matter how hard you try. It just floats up at the top. Or maybe you guys go to some fancy meetings with some like liquid creamer. But I got the one that's floating at the top, little iceberg up there. So what do we have? Well, in Alcoholics Anonymous, what we have, what is available on offer, is permanent, contented sobriety. Now, I'm always going to give us this with a bit of an asterisk. It is permanent, contingent on the maintenance and growth of my spiritual condition, continuing to do this work. But that's what we have on offer. So we get to ask ourselves, let's take this and make this a question. Do I want what you have? And I'll be honest, if the answer is no, that's cool. That's cool. You don't have to do it. Nobody's going to make you. If you don't want it, that is okay. But it is also important for me to remember that as a recovered member of Alcoholics Anonymous, I have a responsibility to be a demonstration of what, Karina's got the biscuits. So yeah, actually some meetings do have like biscuits and cookies. So I tell you, sometimes we do have cookies, but I can't stay sober on cookies. Have I tried? Yeah, probably. To be honest, probably cookies I've tried. But so for those that are new, for those that are looking at this and trying to make this decision for themselves, to answer this question for themselves, I need to be a demonstration. I need to be a demonstration of what we have in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because there's nothing worse. There is nothing worse than when you go to a meeting and there's that old timer that is like miserable. And they're like, well, if you want what we have. I was like, oh, no, I don't. No, thank you. I don't. I'm worried the smokers are going to like, you don't stand too close to them. You're going to go up like kindling like that. Ooh, but that's not safe, you know. I need to be a demonstration of what we have. And then it says, and are willing to go to any lengths to get it. So I get to take these two statements. I get to ask them, turn them to questions and ask myself, am I willing to go to any lengths to get permanent, contented sobriety? Am I willing? And Mark Houston would have this saying, how free do you want to be? And there was a lot of times I was like, ooh, not that free because I'm scared, right? I'll be honest. The steps are scary. All of them are actions that go against my normal nature. All of them are pointing to ego deflation at depth. I don't want to do that. I'm scared. I'm scared I'm going to get rejected. I'm scared that, really, I'm scared I'm going to get rejected all over the place. That's the fear. But I want to point out willingness, being willing to go to any lengths, does not need to look like, oh boy, I can't wait to do a 4-step. Amends with my ex? That sounds delightful. My ex-mother-in-law? I'm ready. That does not need to be what willingness looks like. Willingness can look like I'm terrified. Willing to go to any lengths looks like I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know if I can do it. I'm scared to do it. I don't want to do it, but I will do it anyways. That is what it looks like. And this question, we're going to see this question. I won't bounce us around, but I'll point out some page numbers. So we will find that this question is asked on page 42. That question was asked to Fred on page 42. It says that we asked, the alcoholics asked if he thought he was himself with an alcoholic and if he were really licked this time. And we see this question on page 58. And we'll also, actually, you know what, you guys, I'm doing the thing, so I should probably go slow because I can kind of tell people are right. And so why don't we're going on the tangent. Let's pop over to page 42. Page 42. And it's the very first full paragraph, right, where it says 2 of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. And it's the very bottom sentence of that, or it was not the very bottom sentence. The next, they grinned, which I didn't like so much. And then here it is. Then asked me if I thought myself an alcoholic and if I were really licked this time. Do you want what we have? Are you willing to go to any lengths to get it? And then the other place where this occurs, or this question is seen again, is on page 90. So I'll give you a second I didn't plan on doing this. I often do this in the later chapters, but we'll do it now because we're doing it now. So on page 90. And it's in the middle of the page, the paragraph that's in the middle of the page, paragraph 2. Sometimes it is wise to wait until he goes on a binge. And then it's at the bottom of the paragraph where it says, then let his family or a friend ask him if he wants to quit for good and if he would go to any extreme to do so. So page 90, ask him or let a friend, but ask him if he wants to quit for good and if he would go to any extreme to do so. And then two more, and then we'll go back to page 58. And we're going to go to page 112. Page 112. I'm trying to do it in a slow way so we can all kind of get there, but not too slow, but slow enough. Just trying to find that middle path. All right, 1, 2, 3. Third full paragraph near the bottom of the page, and it's the paragraph that says, "Suppose, however, your husband fits the description of number 2." It goes on to the same principles should be applied, but after his next binge, ask him, and here it is, ask him if he would really like to get over drinking for good. Do not ask that he do it for you or anyone else. Just would he like to? Just would he like to? And again, it's the same, do you want this thing? Do you want to get sober? Do you want this? And we'll pop over, last one, page 142. Page 142 and 2 employers. And it's the first full paragraph near the end of the paragraph. And so it says, say that you believe he is a gravely ill person. 142, first paragraph. With this qualification, being perhaps fatally ill, does he want to get well? You ask because many alcoholics being warped and drugged do not want to quit. But does he? Will he take every necessary step, submit to anything to get well, to stop drinking forever? And so we see that this is a question that's asked again and again and again. And so let's go back to page 58. All right, page 58. So if you've decided you want what we have, on page 58, permanent contented sobriety. And you're willing, doesn't have to look like we're, like at a concert, like, woo, but willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. If I'm willing, then I'm ready. So it says, at some of these we balked. Now, to balk, maybe that's why I had baseball on the brain. To balk is a baseball term. So in baseball, when the pitcher is throwing the ball to the batter, the pitcher is, if they make any sort of motion, they have to go all the way with the pitch. They can't start to like throw the ball and then stop, because that's an unfair advantage. You can't be like, slick, like you do with the dog when you're like, oh, go get it. Huh? You can't do that in baseball. That's unfair. So to start to throw and to stop is considered a balk. And in that, the batter then gets an automatic walk to first base. Another way to visualize what balking is if you've ever seen like where people do like horse jumping, like show jumping or any sort of equestrian where they're riding over jumps. And if you've ever seen a horse gallop towards this jump and like running and at the last minute go, whoa, and like put its arms, hooves, legs. I can do horses. I'm good at this. But it puts its hooves out and it stops suddenly, and sometimes the rider goes, woo, over the top. That is what it means to balk. At some of these we balked. Now, I know that nobody here has ever balked or would ever balk, but to balk is to start and then to stop. So to balk in AA looks like asking somebody to sponsor you and then ghosting them. Nobody here would ever do that. It looks like sitting, by the way, I'm not calling anyone out. I'm making, just in case somebody's like, oh, does she know? I don't know. It looks like going and starting a fourth step and then sitting on it. It looks like going to make an amends and then avoiding that amends as long as possible. It looks like, I'm really looking for sponsees. And I'm just trying to avoid them. There weren't any newcomers. Like that's what it means to balk, to take a start at something. And I want to point out, like, this is again the book meeting us where we're at, with love, understanding, compassion. At some of these we balked. We balked. At some of these we're like, whoa, I don't want to do that. And oftentimes this paragraph is read, or at least how we hear it, and of course we would be a little intense but as like, we thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. So you would sort of like read it like that because you're just trying to get through it, start of the meeting. But there's an intensity with this paragraph where it says that some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. We couldn't. Man, we tried. We were trying to cut corners. We were trying to find the path of least resistance. It did not work. And then it says, with all the earnestness at our command, that is sincerity, with all the sincerity that we can muster, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Dive in. And it's using like, we're begging you, do this. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. And what is it for a result to be nil? That means nil means zero. But what does that practically mean? It means I drink again. The result was I drank again until I was able to let go of my old ideas, my way of doing things, and dive in until I let go. Absolutely. That's not like that let go, but I kind of got my pinky finger in it. It's a hardcore let go, And it says, remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. What's interesting, and I'm going to reference a couple of different ways of approaching how it works. I'm going to talk a little about, at my home group, we read how it works out of the original manuscript, which is a lot more direct. In fact, at the original manuscript, it talks about half measures will avail you nothing. Like the language is very direct. You nothing. Remember that you are dealing with alcohol, like in pointing that out. But another way to approach how it works is it's an interesting thing. I'm going to throw this out because it helps me to see this reading in a new way. And I'll talk about it more on page 60, but there's a group of Alcoholics Anonymous called YPAW, and it's young people in AA. It's for the young at heart, everyone's welcome. And they put on conventions as a way to create service and service opportunities. And when how it works is read at the meetings, there's that sort of like people will chant and yell out different things. So when it says, remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful, they'll go, and expensive. Which that's just like an example of that. And we'll see where some of these are actually really helpful in gaining a new and fresh perspective on this often read, but not really dived into reading. So when it says, remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful, and it's got an exclamation mark. It's exclaiming, this is powerful. It says, without help, it is too much for us. And that is a step one idea. That alcohol is cunning, baffling, powerful, and that without help, it's too much for me. I don't got an answer. That I'm going to drink again. That's what we're talking about. And then it says, but there is one who has all power, capital O in one. So we're pointing to God, our power, creator, spirit of the universe. And it says, that one is God. That one is God. May you find him now. And that idea of there is one who has all power, that one is God, that is a second step idea. That there is a power. Could there be a power that is more powerful than my alcoholism? Could that power exist? And it says, may you find him now. Now, in the original manuscript, the language is a little bit more direct. And it's, hold on, let me grab it. It says, you must find him now. You must find him now. So it's like direct. So it goes on to say, and by the way, now I'm going to just point out is a time frame. Now, not like I'll get to it next week. Like the yard work, no judgment. Now. And that's why the original manuscript sort of language can be so helpful. You must find him now. I've got to. Because alcohol is too much for me. But there is one who has all power. I've got no power. I'm going to drink again. There is a power. I need to find this power now. And we see the urgency with which, if I have an understanding of step one, that drives me into the second step, which leads me into the third step. If I've got no power, I'm going to drink again. But there is a power. Well, I got to get there. I got to access that. I got to have a relationship with that. And then it says, half measures availed us nothing. And we joke about this, right? Like, what meeting have we not? And we've all gone to a meeting where we're joking, half measures. And I do that too, half measures. But what does that mean? Half measures availed us nothing. What is nothing? I drink again. And what is half measures? Half measures is doing some of this. But not doing all of it. Half measures is sitting on a 4. Half measures is doing some of my amends. Half measures is not continuing to pray, meditate, to do inventory. Half measures is to not work with others. That is half measures. And half measures get us drunk. And I'll be honest with you, it feels like, like we say it, but that's the truth. Like there's my alcoholism is pretty black and white. But I think there's some gray area. You know what I mean? I think I can wiggle room. And I think with my half measures, I should at least be able to, get like 75. I mean, I'll get 25, Could I get something for something? I'm doing a little bit of it, right? We've all tried to stay sober on like just going to meetings, I'm sure. And been either miserable or drunk again, right? It did not work. Half measures and availed us nothing. And it says we stood at the turning point. And this turning point is the turning point for our entire life. And here's what this turning point looks like. And I spoke about it earlier today, but this is the turning point. I'm at the precipice, at the edge of a cliff. And I've got the monster that is my alcoholism barreling down on me. And I imagine it like I'm in the woods and I'm trying to outrun this monster. And that monster is my alcoholism. And I'm doing everything I can. Like I'm trying to juke in between trees and I'm trying to get away from this thing. But inevitably it closes in and it takes a swipe and it takes me down. And then I'm able to just pull myself up and I got to start running again because that monster's going to get me. And I run and I run and I run and I run and it gets me again. And I pull myself up and I run and it gets me again. And I pull myself up and it gets me again. And I'm able to get a little bit of separation from it. And I see the reality that is this monster. And I find my way into a clearing. And I'm sprinting. I'm giving everything that I got. And I make it to the edge of this cliff and I see the monster that is my alcoholism barreling down on me. And I look and I'm at the edge of this cliff. And I look down at the chasm below me. And I can't see the bottom. There's this cloud of unknowing. And I can't see what's down there. But I hear you. And I hear your voices saying, jump. Jump, take that leap of faith. We promise it's going to be okay. And with the monster that is barreling down and no other options and a little bit of faith in what you're saying, a little bit of faith in your voices, a little bit of faith in your experience, we take that leap of faith. I take that leap of faith, but it is a leap of faith. That's what these 12 steps are. They are a leap of faith. Let's be honest. I'm not really scared of 4. I'm scared of 5. I'm scared of 9. I'm scared of these things. I don't want to do them and I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm out of options. And alcoholism is barreling down. And I take that leap. And who catches me? Where do I land? What I've found is time and time and time again, I have found myself caught safely and securely in God's hands. And it talks about that in page 100. We realize the things that came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have imagined. That's what we're talking about. And so it says we asked. And anytime in this book we see it, we ask. What's that? Well, that's a prayer. Did y'all know there was a prayer and how it works? It was years. I've been coming to this thing for years when I noticed that for the first time. There's a prayer. And listen, if you get nothing else from this big book study, you can point that out at meetings and feel all smart and clever. And you don't even need to give me credit. But there's a prayer and how it works. And this is a beautiful prayer, especially when we're talking about something that I am afraid to do, that I'm scared to do. God, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe. God, I ask your protection and care with complete abandon. And it is beautiful because I had to let go absolutely. I've got to abandon myself. Just let go. And if you guys know what it's like, well, actually, I'll point 2 things out. If you guys know what it's like to get into a pool, some of you guys might want to just ease your way into it slowly, but we all know that is the worst way to get into a pool. You got a cannonball, and it's like that with the steps. And something else I'll point out. You see, not once in my drinking career, and we can see if this was you guys' experience, but I didn't ever pull out a glass. And now some of you guys are, a glass? Girl, you're using cups? What is that? Now, once in my life did I ever pull out a glass and pour in that liquor and then get some ice and put that ice in and give it a real good stir and then just have a nice slow little sip, just a little sip, and then, set it down on the table and leave it as the ice begins to melt. Some of you are getting like, girl, just drink it. Yeah, we've never done that in our life, and we know what it's like when you sit at a restaurant or you're with family and you see somebody else drinking that way, and it's like, oh, get it in ya, come on, Like, no, I've never drank that way in my life, but I come to Alcoholics Anonymous and I want to work the steps that way. I want to I want to take my time out. No, cannonball in. So God, I ask your protection and care with complete abandon. And it says, here are the steps we took. And I want to point that out because this is not some intellectuals saying this is what is best practice for those lowly alcoholics. No, this is what we did. These are the actions we took. And these 12 steps are written in past tense plural because they are the reports of the actions that those who came before us took. Of course, we're talking mostly about Bill Wilson, and because he was primarily the author, there wasn't as much group conscience. But of course, we're talking about Bill and the first 180 members of Alcoholics Anonymous. Of course, we're talking about that. But here's my experience. The more of us that follow the directions as outlined in this book, the more of us that are included in the we, and these are the steps those of us who have recovered in Alcoholics Anonymous, here's what we did. Not this here's what you better do, because I am going to do the opposite and the opposite quickly. You better not do that. I'm like, ooh, I'm going to do that right now. Don't know what to do. But here is what we did. And so these steps, they are written past tense plural. We admitted, came to believe, made a decision, made a searching. We did. These are the actions we took. And these steps are actions. They're not ideas. They're actions that I need to take. And it says, which are suggested as a program of recovery. Now, I will point out in the original manuscript, it says, here are the steps we took, which are suggested as your program of recovery. But it still said suggested. But I will point out, we don't have a wealth of alternative suggestions. We just don't. We don't. On page 25, it gave an alternative, which was going to the bitter ends, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could. So that's option B. And I will point out, AA doesn't work like a cafeteria. It doesn't. I don't get to take what I like and leave the rest. Take what I like and leave the rest for an alcoholic can be useful in terms of ways of growing and expanding our step 11 practice. If you hear somebody talking about a step 11 practice that they really enjoy, like just a way of seeking a power greater than themselves deeper. Great. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. You don't have to. But the 12 steps are not take what I like and leave the rest. It's not optional. For somebody like me, nobody's going to make me do it. The only power that is going to make me do it is the pain of my alcoholism. So which are suggested as a program of recovery. And so step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. And so what we'll see there is an M dash, which is different than an N dash. So it's a long dash. The N dash is the length of the letter N, and the M dash is the length of the letter M. And so an N dash, a short dash, is used for ranges, compound words. It's used to indicate to or through, like for dates or numbers. But the M dash is used to separate extra information or to mark a break in the sentence. It's also used to call a reader's attention to material they offset. So to bring attention and like two separate ideas. So we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. And I will tell you, because I am powerless over alcohol, that leads me into an unmanageable life. Because my life cannot be manageable if I have to stay sober, I need to stay sober, I want to stay sober, and I cannot stay sober. If I cannot control the amount that I take once I start to drink, but I have a thought that takes me back again and again and again to the first drink, even though it is destroying my life, that is unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a capital P power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And as you guys know, I like to break down step 2, came to believe that a power. So step 2, part 1, all I need to believe is that a power could exist. Step 2, part 2, could this power relieve me of the mental obsession? That's it. Step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And so what we'll see is that step 3 is simply a decision. I won't say just, because it is kind of the biggest one I'll ever make, you know. Anyone ever here, don't make any major decisions in your first year? Girl, have you seen that third step? That's a pretty major decision. But it is simply a decision. And a decision without action wasn't really a decision at all. And it's a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. So my will and my life does not get turned over to God's care in step 3. Step 3 is where I decide to take the rest of the steps as a way of life, and the rest of the steps turn my will and my life over to God's care. And I really want to emphasize care. Because when I am standing on that precipice and I do not know if my will and my life will be cared for, and I don't know what's going to happen, man, like, I don't know. But here's the thing. Anytime in this book I read a promise, and we got promises all over this book, but more important than that, anytime in my life I experience a promise as it is outlined in this book, that becomes irrefutable evidence of God's care. My will and my life will be cared for. And I promise you, anything is doing better than I was. Was I caring for my life? No, I was actively suicidal. There is nobody whose my life is in worse hands to be in than mine. Have you seen my decision making? Goodness gracious, no. And a lot of times people refer to our will and our lives as our thoughts and our actions, and that might be true. But I have a sponsee that he described it as, what if my will is my actions and my life is the results? I turn my actions and the results over to this care, the care of this power. And yeah, it's more contemporary and more common, will, thoughts, lives, actions. But man, I like that take. Because if you're like me, you know what it's like. I got a first thought and it takes a lot of meditation before I can see that thoughts aren't just are. I can see them floating by, you know. And I can't always change my thoughts, but I can always change my actions. You know, I can't think my way into better actions, but I can act my way into better thinking, and the thinking comes. So that's my not controversial hot take, because I'm not dying on that hill. I already told you one of the hills, and if I do okay for time, we'll see the other hill. I'm not doing okay for time. We might not see the hill this week. We'll see it next week. Lots of hills. Alrighty. I live in the prairies. We don't got hills. We do got mountains though. Alrighty. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted. Now there's 2 ways to look at the word admit. One is a bit of a confession, and I always make this joke. I gotta confess. I stole your car, I slept with your husband, and I peed on your carpet. That's a confession. And I'm just kidding. I would never do those things. It was linoleum. But the other way to look at this is admit. So if we were going to a sporting event, or we were going to a concert or a movie, we would get a ticket, and that ticket would say admit 1. So there is admitting as in a confession, but there is also the admitting as to let in. And so in step 5, I can let in God and another human being. Just another way to look at it. And then the exact nature of our wrongs. And it says 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. I'm going to point out God's doing the removing. I'm not doing the finagling with my defects of character. I want to finagle, but if we saw how unmanageable my life was, don't leave those in my hands. Let's give them to God. And then in step 7, it says, humbly asks him to remove our shortcomings. Now, in the original manuscript, here's how step 7 was written. Humbly, on our knees, asked him to remove our shortcomings, holding nothing back. Holding nothing back. That's what it said in the original manuscript. And so sometimes people will ask, well, Paige, what's the difference between a shortcoming, a defect, and the exact nature of our wrongs? Well, Bill Wilson answered this question, and he said they're the same thing. He just didn't want the wording to be redundant. So they're synonyms. And that makes sense to me, because it doesn't make sense that I would share something and see it in my fifth step and then ask for something different to be removed, and then have something else, and then become willing for something else to get removed, and then ask for a third separate thing. It makes sense. I would share this, and I would see it for what it is, and I would become willing for it to go, and then I would ask. That's it. And that's my, again, not so hot a take. We're going to get to my hot take in a little bit. So it says 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And it says 10, continued, which, man, I was kind of hoping I could have a set it and forget it deal. It says continued. I got here, it said continued. Sober 1 year, said continued. Sober 5 years, said continued. 10 years, 15 years, keep saying continued. Oh man, I gotta keep doing this. Continued to take personal inventory. When did I learn to do that? Step 4. And when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. When did I learn to make right my wrong? Step 9. And so we'll see that step 10 is a continuation of the 4 through 9 process. And then 11, it says sought, which is to seek. Now there are different levels of seeking. Some of you who are parents know what it's like when your child is seeking for their sock that you put on their bed so that they can get their shoes on and get out the door. Hurry up, we're running late, right? There's that level of seeking. And then there's the level of seeking when you like got the Easter bunny candy out and they're, running around, but they'll do that for a little bit, then get bored, right? But then there's that deeper level, that continual seeking. And that's what I'm called to do, to seek through prayer and meditation, not and or. Not and or. I was reading it and or meditation for a long time. It is and meditation. Rude. It's asking me to do both. To improve. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to, iron on his socks. Yeah. Improve, which is to grow. So again, this is not a stagnant thing. It's not a thing that I did and then I'm done. No, I'm growing in this. Improve. Our conscious contact with God. That conscious means with knowing. That with knowing contact with God as we understood him. Now, to understand in the 1930s dictionary that I have is to know through experience. And at step 11, at this point, I'm beginning to have an experience. And it says praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. That's what I'm asking for. Knowledge of what God, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe's will for me, and the power to carry that out. It says 12, on page 60, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And we see as it's written, there's 3 parts. And the first part is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. So what that is if you're not sure, that's a promise. That is a promise. If I work these steps, and I take this course of action to the best of my ability, I will have a spiritual awakening. It is promised as the result. And it says so that's step 12, part 1. The result of this course of action is a spiritual awakening, and that is promised. And that is the same promise that Ebby Thatcher made to Bill. My friend promised when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator, that I would have the elements of a way of living which answered all my problems. Problems, not my problem. Problems. So having had a spiritual awakening is the result of these steps. We try to carry this message to alcoholics. So that's step 12, part 2, carrying this message to others, sponsoring, working with others, carrying this message. That's what this message, not my message, the message. And it says, and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And so what are the principles? Now, this is a bit of a hot take that I have, but you guys are probably used to this one, where it's the principles for me are not these nebulous concepts behind the steps. And if that's what your experience or your belief or your approach is, you're right. You're right and I'm wrong. But for me, the principles, these principles in all my affairs are not this nebulous like hope and courage and that, but it is the tangible actions of the 12 steps. That is what I am practicing in all my affairs. Because if you've ever, some of you have traffic, like if you're around Atlanta, I know they got traffic. New York, you got traffic. Traffic. Anyone here ever been in traffic and feeling like you're running late and have a hard time pulling tolerance and love out of nowhere, you know? I need the action to get the result. So I need prayer. I need a 10th step. I need, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, absolutely. So that takes us right to, man, I didn't even finish all of how it works today. Well, come back next time for the thrilling conclusion of the thing that we read at every meeting. And I'll toss it over to you, Vivian.
Thank you, honey.